everybody. Thanks for joining us today. My name is Rebecca Marciano, and I will introduce our session. Online finance and investing are gaining in importance, a tendency that has been accelerated by the COVID crisis. It is therefore essential to provide clients with an easy and seamless experience from the moment that they set foot into your online space. At the same time, security and compliance must be warranted. To discuss this heavy challenge, I am pleased to introduce our speakers. Welcome to Tobias Diddle, co-founder at Stoker, and to Frank Rosich, fintech lead at TELINDUS. Tobias and Frank will explain us today how a 100% online investing platform uses innovative digital tools to successfully provide a novel service experience to investors. Before starting, let me tell you a few words about Stoker and TELINDUS. Stoker has democratized capital markets by allowing everyday investors to directly fund forward-thinking startups and SMEs in return for a share of the venture's future profits or revenue. As we will discuss compliance challenges, I will just add that Stoker is subject to the supervision of two regulators, CSSF in Luxembourg and ACPR in France. TELINDUS is a designer of customer digital experience and a specialist data manager. Just before starting, please feel free to ask all your questions in the chat. Frank and Tobias will pick them up at the end of the session. And after the webinar, you will receive an email with the contact details of our panelists, as well as a link for the recorded session. Feel free to reach out. The stage is yours.
Hi, everybody. Good to have you here. Let's move on to the next page of the presentation, if you don't mind. And the next. Here we go. So actually, you know, the question sometimes people ask themselves, and they saw that during this COVID era, it's like, where have all the clients gone, right? Where have they gone? Well, we have clear statistics that have been actually evolving over years, even pre-COVID. Actually, numbers you see here are pre-COVID, that, you know, 4.5 billion actually going online, living online. And that on average, they spend over 6 hours online every day. So that's pretty huge, and there's a growth rate. And so basically, people are more online than they're in stores or in banks or in, at their asset manager. And even if they're in store, one realizes, and it's just enough when you look at the supermarket, right? People still have their mobile in their hand and they're looking at online comparisons, right? Even when they're physically with you, they actually stay online. So it's important when you want to target clients for whatever reason that you think online. Next slide, please. So what are these digital drivers out there? And clearly there are few. So the digital client expectation is a major driver. So clients want to have an omni-device access all the time, 24/7, and control over their activity. So that's one clear driver for digitalization. The other driver is platform-oriented distribution. So increasingly speaking, when people want to do a financial transactions, they don't first start a relationship with an institution and then consume products, but they actually go to a platform, choose what they're looking for, and then, right, they do whatever they need, like a payment or investment, so on. Then the market framework has changed. PSD2 is just one symptom of this, basically, where the game has changed and you need to provide open access. In the past, you had a bank account as a bank and you owned your clients through a bank account. That's over. These times are clearly over, basically. You don't own the bank account anymore. It's a client's bank account. The other point is operational efficiency. There is clearly a quantum leap out there in terms of how cost effective and productive you can become by applying digital tools. It's not like I'll reduce my cost by 10, 20%. You can divide those costs actually by 2 and 3 in terms of efficiency. The other major driver is clearly regulation and compliance. Regulators are becoming increasingly constringent the onus is getting much bigger. At the same time, regulators are also getting very open when it comes to online. There have been circulars, Q&A on video onboarding, online onboarding, so the regulators are actually embracing this universe that is online finance. The other aspect is competitive landscape. It is clear there are plenty of challenges out there, so that you need an openness in terms of disrupting yourself. And finally, there's this point I call pink pandas, right? I always cite the example of Alibaba, who created an investment arm that was initially created to fund themselves, and suddenly they became the biggest money market fund in China. So you are in an environment where a new player comes, that new player could suddenly become a dominant player in the market. Next slide, please. So if we delineate of this, we see two things. I'll look at the slide on the left. Basically, it clearly shows that over more or less 4 to 5 years, the total participants in online finance has become the clear majority. Where 1/3, 5 years ago was still saying, I want to go into a branch to do my financial transactions. Today, it's below 15%. Now, the other interesting thing is, basically, if you looked in the recent past, and that's the graph on the right, which transactions were done off and online. So clearly, most users would go online to control their balance, to maybe do a payment, to do what were called simple financial transactions. They're from complex advisory-driven transactions. Actually, the percentage of people going online dropped below 30 or so percent. Now, the tendency we see in the market is we're going from omni-channel, i.e. I want to access my financial services, and as we'll talk about my investments through any channel, to actually, I want to have omni-service solutions, meaning I want to be able to consume, and that's really driven by COVID because there was no other choice. I want to consume my financial services online when I want, and it means every financial service, even the complex financial services that are considered to be like advice prone. Next slide, please.
All right, I think thank you very much for this introduction, Frank. And I think what we have seen, over the last few months, also during the confinement, when a lot of people were confined at home and were depending on digital solutions, that actually digital solutions work very well. They're very, very convenient. And I have seen this morning data from an online broker, Schwab Investment. I think they had 27 of 30 most high volume days within the last few months. So it's showing that a lot of people going into an online investing, and this is not only for millennials but also for the older generation. And as we here see in this slide, millennials definitely, they were in the last 2 years already looking for more digital solutions when investing. They were going to eToro and other online platforms where they invested. And as you see here, the increase in wealth over the next years will be tremendous and will even make the shift faster. But what we have not expected, I think, when we were setting up our company a few years ago, that due to COVID, this will accelerate really tremendously. So we are extremely happy to have developed now a solution together with Digital-KYC, which enables professional investors, but also retail investors and more tech-savvy investors, an online solution where you can simply invest into projects, but not only startups, as you have said in the beginning, but also small and medium-sized companies who have innovative projects. It's also thinkable that an investment fund is using our interface to issue alternative investment fund units to investors he likes to onboard. And the same goes for securitization vehicles. So together with Digital-KYC, we have really developed something very unique. We connected two things: digital onboarding and blockchain technology, to create a direct link between the investor and the issuer of securities. So basically,
Tobias, if I might chime in there, if you don't mind me, it's about tokenization, as I understand, and maybe this is a good time to ask our first question to the public, right? Because we have certain questions to you, right? And the first question, I don't know if you can show it online actually, is how big is in your mind the tokenization market projected to become in 2027? We have been starting on recent years. I don't know if you can project that question now. So basically, you will see there is a pulse section on which you can click on the top right, and basically we have question number 1 there that says how big is the tokenization market projected to be in 2027? You can submit your vote and click. We'll give you a second. And the second question is actually already out there. It's saying, have you ever done tokenized investment?
So I think now we can see like the results already, like how big the tokenization market is, and it's changing. It's still changing. Yeah. So it's between 4 trillion and 980 billion, as far as I can read. So basically, how we at Stocker, and probably you also, Frank, sees this market coming. We will actually expect that most of the securities will be using blockchain technology to manage like the investors register and manage like the total investor database over the next 5 years, without actually the need of a custodian or other intermediaries like transfer agents. And this is already enabled by Stocker right now.
So actually, just the correct answer to the question number 1, it's 24 trillion, right? The projection. So the majority has been conservative here. So it's bigger than most people on this call expect. Interesting. Okay, so it's a bigger opportunity. It shows you're clearly in the right spot. And we have only a minority that has invested to tokenized investing right now. So I think that's interesting too, because yes, you'll be able to show us how easy it actually is to do such an investment, right?
Absolutely. But the reason actually why probably most people have not ever done tokenized investment is the lack of platforms and solutions right now. And I think there we are together with Digital-KYC at a unique marketplace where we can already offer like a solution like that. And I think like to make for our audience a little bit give a feeling what you can expect when you go onto our platform, I will show like a little bit how our platform is actually working, and I will show like a video like that. Let me just enable screen sharing. Alrighty.
Before the demo starts, we have our third question actually to you, and it's actually how many click, what are the least most clicks? We did a study required today to open an online investment with bank account. There are a few options out there. Now I'll be interested in getting your feedback. You see it's, potentially there are pretty wide spreads being proposed, right? We'll give you a minute or so to answer this. The answers are flowing in. Okay, we're getting answers. Wow. So actually, most persons have answered correctly. It's between 24 and 120 clicks. So that means it's kind of over 4 times the amount of clicks between the best and the worst. So show us how it works with the Stocker. Yes.
Sure. I think like one important information just to add on to this, Paul, Frank, I think it's not only the number of clicks, it's also like how complicated each step is, because even when you have like one step and it's unsolvable, it will be a very difficult journey. All right. So basically now I want to show you in the next few minutes how easy investors can actually create an investor's account on Stalker using the digital KYC solution of TELINDUS and our blockchain and front-end environment. So the account actually you create is this equivalent to a securities account at a bank with the difference actually that it's totally free. And you can manage it yourself, so you're not like relying on the mercy of your bank or of an intermediary. And that's how we see also Stalker. It's like an interface between investors and issuers of securities. And the next step, you will see like how the compliance officer sees all in the back end, and how easy it is actually to manage like the data like the investor puts in. Finally, we will show you how like the issuer sees the solution and how they can manage easily like their securities, but also their investor space. So let's get into this. First, you come on Stalker platform and you open an account with your email address. You scan your ID cards. I don't know whether you want to say something about this, Frank, but here we have like integrated system we have already, as you can see here, like this little logo. We have here integrated TELINDUS technology.
Yeah, I think what's important is actually whatever digital technology you use, it must seamlessly integrate into existing systems to make the user experience easy and fluid. You shouldn't have to leave the universe. And then you do basic things like instead of typing information, you just scan it and you get it validated automatically. That's what the new technologies are actually offering and what's happening here now. Exactly.
So basically what you do is like you scan your ID cards, your identification documents, and you do like a face verification, as you can see in the next step. So it's a very seamless process. What happens in the backend is that the face and the ID will be compared with each other, and there will be a score then visible also for the compliance officer. Then you will put in like additional data which is required according to what actually the issuer is wanting to see, and what is also required according to corporate law. And then actually the whole process is already done very quick. The next step is then simply to connect actually a blockchain address which serves as like the recipient of all the security tokens issued on Stalker. So you register here in this example like the Ethereum via like a browser wallet. We have like beautiful videos where we explain all this very easily and manageable. You can name your Ethereum address, and here you go. Then you have registered your Ethereum address, and this is like the most important step on our platform. So basically connecting your own blockchain address with the digital KYC data, which is securely stored on a server managed by Digital KYC in Luxembourg, and the Ethereum, the whitelisted Ethereum address. You have like a fully fledged securities account. Which is very beautiful, and as you have seen, it takes only a few seconds to create it. It's indeed really equivalent to what you get in a bank, but it's obviously without costs. Then we have like some risk questionnaires to be answered, also according to regulation. Obviously, you need to know what you're investing in, and that's basically it. You have created your securities account on Stalker. You can individualize your dashboard, and therefore you can manage all your investments. The next step is like here, the compliance officer journey is, I just will dive into this a little bit. You see like here, you see like all the data which was put in. You receive like a risk scoring. You get all the information about PEPs and sanctions list. You see all the data of the investor as a compliance officer, and can verify like all the documents in the backend. We have implemented a manual approval process also to make sure that everything is in line with like the KYC process. And we have set up and also communicated with the regulators, and then it's basically done. The compliance operator types in review and accept it, saves it, and then this is like the real interesting part here. Like these two things come now together, like the digital KYC data and the blockchain address. Here you see like a peek into our backend information. You can see here, okay, KYC documents are approved. The connector KYC status is approved, and down there you will see like the Ethereum address, and these two connections make actually the securities purely digital and transferable on blockchain. It's only investors who are KYC'd and who have registered their Ethereum address can actually trade and receive tokens. And now the last step, it's the issuer's journey. So basically, like either the investment fund, the securitization vehicle, or the venture receives from Stocker like a beautiful dashboard where they can manage like all the investor data. Here, like you see like the securities issued, you see like the number of investors. You get a beautiful field where you can see also like where the people are coming from, and any information you want can be managed here in the back end. Here you see like, okay, which currencies they have paid, and you see like their connected data addresses. This is like the blockchain address, and again like the data. And then you can obviously manage your own investors register, fully digital and fully online, very convenient, and you can invest also like data. So basically, all these four things come now together. It's like the onboarding, the KYC backend, the connection with the blockchain, and then the seamless manageable dashboard by the issuer, which provides, in our view, a very interesting and usable solution to manage digital securities.
So thank you for this. This was obviously very instructive. Now on to our next question before we move on. The question is, what is the amount of web users, right? It's a bit of a trick question because it was on one of the slides we saw prior, so let's see if some of them had spotted that. Yeah, I'll just give it a best guess. But again, you understand why this is important, because actually, it's online that people are increasingly going to do their finance, and to be very clear, online are their tablet, their PC, notebook, or phone. It is, very broad. So let me see, we got a lot of votes in. And that's interesting, because actually the amount of, we're being corrected, so yeah, okay. So it's 50-50, so it's actually, okay, we got some more. I think we're more or less done, I don't know, let me see if there are other surprises out there. So actually the correct answer is 5.45 billion, so it's bigger than a lot of people out there assume. So potential is really huge, right, in a certain sense. So how do you enable such a fluid online client experience? If you could move on to the next slide. So actually, what we've done, we have our in-house dev teams and architects, and we partially developed KYC modules or digital identity management modules, but we also partner with third parties to integrate their modules, because you're not going to fabricate every best module in the world in the same spot. And this should be considered as a set of pieces of Legos that you can unify, and tailor however you want. So it goes from liveness tests that will show that actually you're a live person, to some sanction list screenings and all that stuff. If you move on to the next slide, Once you have basically knowledge of your in-house and other technical tools you could use, and have created kind of API-based environments so that these tools can seamlessly be combined and mixed as however you want, you then take a design thinking approach. And that's, for example, with Stoker, and we said, okay, what kind of journey will the investors want, right? So they need a fast journey, but at the same time, it needs to be a journey that's compliant and secure. And there's a whole big key element in there. It's about trust, right? The people tend to go online in terms of investment because they trust the system to work. Trust meaning that the system is going to use their data in a responsible manner, that the information that being provided is being analyzed in a correct way, right? So basically, we co-designed together a journey for an investor that will be fast and fluid and secure. And based on this, then after that was done, we would basically take modules, as we talked about. And if you'd move to the next slide, and basically say, okay, now we have decided on the journey, which is the journey that I've seen there. We will basically assemble those modules, right? We'll say, okay, we will add a module for ID verification, because people, and when you say ID verification, you need to structure it in a manner that it actually analyzes tons of IDs. So it could be a driving license, it could be a passport, identity card, we could even analyze a credit card if we wanted to, right? And what's very nice about this is the analytics is as deep and pushed, right, than you would do when you basically pass customs at an airport, right? But what's nice for the investor actually is the investors based on this, don't need to type information anymore, right? Typing is out. If you can minimize typing, you make your investor or your financial clients actually happy, right? Then obviously the challenge is, well, once you have an ID and you have analyzed as a finance provider that it is genuine, right? You must ensure that's actually the same person holding the ID that's doing this, right? Not somebody who maybe stole that idea. That's why we have tests where we can make a picture and compare the picture to the picture in the ID, right? It's called facial liveness. Liveness goes one step further. Liveness will ask you maybe to move your face a little bit or do something that shows actually that you're alive. So we'll create a 3D version of your face so that if somebody is trying to replay or project a picture of your face, that system would detect it, right? Then obviously in the background screenings happen. Is that investor on a politically exposed person or a media exposed person or a sanctions list? All this happens within seconds. Actually, investor doesn't notice. It's fluid, right? But for a compliance perspective, that makes it very useful. And then you can add other features like you can verify emails or even addresses in terms of their veracity, or you can add mobile intelligence that has two big layers to it. So basically, based on the mobile phone number, you can send an SMS or a message and do dual-factor authentication. But at the same time, basically, you can do scoring on mobile numbers in terms of have these numbers being used for fraud and things like this. All this happens very seamlessly within seconds and gives compliance team a way to score basically whoever they're due diligencing. And while the investor doing all this just sees, hey, this is fantastic. I'm actually creating this investment account within, less than 2 minutes, and then I can act and be active. So this leads us actually to our next question, right? Which is obviously a very open question, Nepal. So who still wants to go to a branch to create an investment account instead of just simply doing this in your living room online, right? I mean,
tricky question, Frank.
It could be somewhere else. Oh, wow, surprise, 100%.
Yeah.
Actually, yeah, maybe they should kind of change the decoration in some branches and make them as comfortable as my living room. That may be the solution, right? And offer me a drink, and maybe then I'll go back, right? But meanwhile, I'd rather stay home and enjoy this. We are at the very, very early starting points of all this, right? I strongly believe that COVID is giving a huge boost to online financial activity and online investment. But I'd be really interested in hearing your perspective on this, Tobias. Where do you see this going?
So actually, what we expect is, just like to give a name, like a box for all this, like we consider us, like for example, as an Internet S3.0 solution. So really providing a solution where you don't rely anymore on a backend managed by a single entity. So it's even going further to online investing in this sense, So when you think about like the scandal of Wirecard over the last few years, you're still relying on what actually the data they put in for you on the back end, while we provide like really like a seamless solution where the users connects directly actually then with the blockchain, and the same goes for the issuers of the securities. So this is like a next level of trustless systems, which will also eliminate fraud, and some called it digital IDs or investment IDs. I think the beauty of this is obviously that you have like a sort of a trustless solution, which enables also zero knowledge transactions between investors, companies, and the like. So you don't need to know actually my age or which country I live in, but you have just to make sure that I have like the legal age, and I live in a country where I'm allowed to invest, and that's all you need to know, and then you can transact with me. And I think this is what we actually provide also like together now with TELINDUS, such a solution which enables actually exactly such a Internet 3.0 transaction where you don't require like a bank anymore. But a branch is obviously a step before. So 20% at least.
So an interesting phenomenon we have noticed is we work with a broad set of financial service providers, and for example, in wealth management, we have seen that digitally enabled investing or services were created basically with the younger generation, the heirs in mind, right? To say this is the kind of finance experience they want, so we'll just implement this. What we have seen due to COVID is suddenly actually the seniors who were still more inclined to say, I want to see my relationship manager and spend time with them, suddenly came back and said, actually, I would want to go online too now for safety reasons. How can I do this? You know, how would that be easily possible? So we showed you how the onboarding works, but actually increasingly there's this demand to go online. And to do that, we need to ensure that also there's Tobias alluded to it, a very efficient digital identity that people can use, basically, so that if they recurrently go online, they're clearly recognized as such. And it becomes a very easy experience to return online in a safe manner, right?
Absolutely. Yeah. And I think I just like to add on this, like everybody is right now also like really used to digital solutions, even older people, because like now even in Luxembourg there are no menus available in the restaurants, right? So you just scan a QR code and you get it on your phone. And I think this solutions or these requirements now allow actually a lot of people like to experience online and maybe like and then long term also like investment solutions, and the fear is going down because it works. Very simple.
The other thing is there is also a tendency from investors to increasingly want to feel that they're actually having a direct contact or connection with the investment they do, right? That it hasn't been filtered to 20 filters and all that, but they want to have the feeling that they make their own choices. And that's also something that basically is kind of driving all this, right?
Yeah.
Direct connection to an investment. And also the other thing is yields are low. Yields are very low, meaning that the costs of doing an investment matters more, right? If the cost is too high, it will simply eat away too much of the low yield we currently have. So a lot of people in the industry have become extremely cost conscious in terms of how they can enable these investments. And it is very clear that digital technologies make this so much more efficient also in terms of costs out there, right? So if we have nothing else to add, I think we have seen a few questions up here, and maybe start addressing the questions out there. So the interesting questions to start with is, how do regulators welcome such a solution? Wow, okay. Do you want to talk to this, Tobias?
So absolutely. And I think the answer is astonishing, because our experience was very welcoming. Our first meetings also with the Luxembourg regulator, and we presented our solution. We were fearing a lot of resistance, maybe because it's so novel. But in the end, I can simply say they really appreciated like this idea of connecting directly the investors with the ventures with such an easy solution, as long as you obviously comply with KYC and AML, because like the risks are lower than in a normal investment world, and also the risk for fraud are simply lower, and this has been, I think, recognized at least by our feeling by the Luxembourg regulator, but also by other regulators in Europe, by the AMF in Paris, and also at one point of time at the BaFin.
So actually, we have seen a similar phenomenon. So the regulators are extremely curious. So we are showing our solution set on a regular basis, whether it's financial regulators, insurance regulators, also the financial task force, or even we showed it also to the police in one country. And they're extremely curious to see these things. Obviously, they always provide very insightful feedback in terms of making sure that their checks and enforce that will avoid abuse of online system. It's always a cat and mouse game. That's why we're steadily adding security features, right, to avoid being gamed. But clearly, there's a very, very open mind to that.
Absolutely, I think also. So next question, I think you want to read it out? Or?
So the next question is actually, how long does it take to implement such a solution? Do you want to give it a stab? Yes.
It's a complex task, and we have experienced this also together, Frank, and we were working on this for I would say 1.5 years to pull it out. But on both sides, I think we had very capable developers, as far as like in the back end and also in the front end. But yeah, it depends all on the resources. The main challenge, I think, for our solution was that it was novel, so we had like to experience problems which maybe other companies don't see. But however, it's a complex product, and also like from not only from a tech perspective but also from a legal perspective. So you need quite good resources to pull this out. But the good thing is we provide such a solution already, and it's on the market. So everybody could use it if he wants to.
So we have a very broad experience. It really depends on the use case, how much customization there is, and and it starts really with discussions about, well, as we alluded to, design and how do you want it to look. And in our experience, it ranges from you can use a standard version that is actually implemented within a few weeks to it can take much longer. And the other thing I would say to that, actually, in a certain sense, it evolves, right? You start with somebody that says, I want to work mainly with retail investors. That's my base. And actually, as time passes by, so actually we have new investors joining us, which are more like institutional investors, right? So please, we need to evolve the solution now so that it can onboard corporate or, I don't know, kind of asset managers, what other type of investors are suddenly interested in the products that are out there. So there's also this aspect about basically evolving the solution depending on the evolution of the clients, right? That invest in a given solution. So it's very multidimensional, right? Then we have a next question is, hello, what is your opinion about DLT ledger, please? Why don't we start? And also, what are your advice on understanding KYC digitization, please? I'll let you take the DLT ledger to yes.
I think like maybe this question was also posed very much in the beginning of our presentation, but obviously we use distributed ledger technology for issuing securities. So we use the Liquid blockchain as well as like the Ethereum blockchain, which are different in their concepts, but anyhow they allow like a secure way of transferring and negotiating digital securities, and both solutions together, also with a secure database, enables any issuer who wants to issue digital securities to any kind of investors in the end. So our opinion is that distributed ledger technology is definitely the way to go, and also we think that permissionless architectures are capable of catering easily the transfer and the issuance of securities on blockchain. You don't need a permissioned blockchain for that. It's even better and more transparent when you have more nodes in the system who are verifying the transactions, as when you have like a few nodes which are ran again by banks.
So on the second part of the question, advice on understanding KYC digitalization, I think there are two layers. The first part of understanding this is look at your clients, right? What do they want? Where do they go? Where do they want to live? How do they want to actually transact with you? You start from there, and basically then you assemble the digital tools that will enable that future client experience, right? It's very important to start from there, right? Client-driven, client-oriented. I always tell the people, tech on its own, it's not what you need to value. You need to value actually an improved client experience, and that improved client experience is going to drive your revenues, right? If the client, and the client can be a direct client, like here, sometimes it's an intermediary actually, right? Is at the center of everything. There is a second layer, obviously. You cannot just please the client and that's it, right? We have regulatory constraints we must conform with, and that means you must also integrate basically the compliance or the regulatory team dealing with regulatory matters, right? And their inputs are extremely valuable in terms of basically identifying what information do they actually need in order to have a sound judgment on the risks that you are taking in terms of compliance or other aspects. With investment, there are things like MiFID, right? Investor qualifications that also enter, right, into the equation. So measure the comfort with risk and the information required, and then you can sit down and see what part of that information analytics and decision bits can actually be automatized as to compared to the parts basically where you still want to have a human being look at it because there's something that's out of the norm, right? Or at what point in the process do you want to have a human decision making happen? What point of preparation of information and analytics do you want to have in terms of due diligence? And if you look at these two things, so on one side, how do I optimize really the satisfaction of my client? And that is often linked to the fact that it must be super easy because actually they come to see to invest and not to do KYC, right? i.e. so the more invisible my KYC is, the happier my client usually is, right? And the other pillar, how do I ensure actually I have really very stringent and clear-cut analytics, due diligence, and that I can trace and evidence on the compliance side. That's how you understand basically how the digitalization of KYC happens in an efficient manner. Right? I think that with this, we have more or less covered the questions that were thrown at us. Meaning I would to Rebecca.
Yeah, we'll just thank everybody for having attended the webinar. Thanks, Frank. Thanks, Tobias, for the quality of the session. Last thing for attendees, in the poll section, you will find 3 additional questions. Please answer them to help us improving the content of our webinars. You will receive our contact details and the recording of the session very soon. Have all a very, very great day.
Thanks. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Thanks.
Bye-bye. Thank you very much for attending.